Hi, my name is Jay, and I draw a lot of faces. And over the past couple of weeks, I've gotten a few requests to make a full drawing process slash how I draw certain parts of my faces video. So that's what we're doing today, and it's all in real time, so I will be there with you every step of the way. But let's stop stalling and actually get into the video. Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be walking you through my entire art process in real time. This is me. This is me right now in real time, moving my cursor. Couple warnings beforehand, my process isn't perfect, but it's mine, and I like how my drawings end up looking. We're going to be going over how I draw faces. For all of my character videos, there were little headshots, and I got a couple comments of people wanting my art process specifically for like noses and cheekbones and other things like that, and I did a poll because I do polls. If you don't look at my post section, I am lurking there almost all the time. I use Clip Studio Paint, by the way, and I use a Canvas 13 tablet, just the regular one, so it's kind of like a baby and I can't see that well, but it's okay. First things first, we need a file, so go up here, click new, because I have to do it the really old way, or you can just go here, new, and it pops up on my main monitor, but I'll drag it down just for you. These are all my presets. I made this one specifically for this video. This is the size I use when I'm like brainstorming characters, if it looks familiar at all. These are the properties, and we actually need to change something. Your resolution right here basically determines how far your lines can go without them getting like kind of choppy or blurry. I always do 150 and it works for me for what I need for just faces and stuff, but for my actual like full body drawings, I go up to 200 or 250 even. It makes your file sizes bigger, so careful if you do this if you want to post it anywhere, but this is what I do. Next thing, this is a really harsh color and my eyesight is really bad and I have big blue orbs, so it's sensitive to bright things. So I make it a gray, probably a lighter gray than this, honestly. It also looks better on camera if your canvas is gray, so that's what I do. Next, what do I use? These are all of my brushes over here. I don't do anything fancy on Clip Studio Paint, I don't really know. But this is the pen that I use for literally everything. The Sai pen, I forgot where I got it from. I will try to have the link down in the description if I can find it, but this is what I use. It was free when I bought it. I'm not sure if it always is. And as far as colors, I go down to the red and do a very, very dark maroon for my sketching color. Why is my pen frozen? What the freak? It's a little bit softer than just a typical black color for your pen, and I think it mixes well with my colors. But we'll get more into that later. How do you make a face? I always start with your typical circle, big and beautiful, right there on the screen. Also, side note, I do use references on the side. I look for a face that kind of resembles my character, and I'm good at tracking back and forth between things, so that is a big tip. Please use references. Don't listen to whatever people on TikTok are telling you. References are good and they are great and they are a good skill to learn. The like whole bouncing back and forth between a reference and the drawing type of thing. It helps your stylization and it's easy, so do it. You're gonna do your basic line codes right here. I call them line codes because that's what it is in my brain. I think it's more of like a template. Most faces are in the shape of squares, so I always just make a square, and it helps me decide where my cheekbones and everything needs to be. I go down here, I mark where my chin is supposed to be. I go up here, I mark where the top of my head is supposed to be. I got it down to like a basic science at this point, but this is the steps I do. Next, I place my nose and my ears because it is the most important part and it'll base the rest of your face. Right here is where our cheekbone is gonna start, and your ears go basically right by your cheekbones. That is uneven. Look at pictures of real faces. This will teach you everything you need to know. Next, I place my nose. Your nose is supposed to be a little bit under your ears, and then your mouth a little bit under that. As far as eyes, they're supposed to be around the middle of the ears, so I just kind of scope it out like that. This line is important. If you want your character looking up, put it up, and if you want your character looking down, put it down, and it'll help you remember. I think we'll keep it down for this drawing. Next, we work out the rest of the face. I got a comment specifically about cheekbones, and I kind of have a science to it. Your chin's right here, so I draw two lines going up, and I connect it to the ears, and then I erase all of my other lines. This looks a little bit wonky at first, so kind of play around. Most of my characters have a pretty even facial expression, so that didn't make any sense. Most of my characters have pretty even faces, not expressions. Play around with it a little bit. Different characters are going to have different draw lines. It could be rounder, it could be more square. When I drew Roscoe, his jawline was basically going out like this, and then I put in his cheekbones. Today I decided we're drawing my creepypasta character Blair. Probably would have been good info to give you guys. I'm gonna put his little reference over here. Maybe we'll crop it. There. We have a little reference of Blair's face now, so you guys know who we're drawing. This is my creepypasta character, if you don't know. After you get your jawline sort of figured out, Blair has sort of like a skinnier chin, so I make sure to add features like that I give all my characters. Good rule of thumb when it comes to character designing, pay attention to what features people have. If you're out in public, doing whatever, just pay attention to what's out there and how people's faces are built. Cooler facial features the better, and you can kind of differentiate between your characters. One thing I will do also is I will flip my canvas a little. This is kind of uneven, so I will split it down the middle if I'm lazy. Grab the other part of my face, and then I will go down here and I will do a quick copy and paste, and then the scale/rotate tool, and I'll go over here and I will flip my canvas again and sort of line it up, and that ensures that your faces are even. Some people call it cheaty. I think it's a good habit to get into if you want your art to look the way that you want. Sorry. This is a no rules channel. We do things crazy style over here. Okay, we have an even face and an even jaw. Next thing is the cheekbones. Your cheekbones are gonna start where this circle starts, right here. I picture Blair as having pretty sharp features, so I just go out kind of where this circle starts, like that, and then just do a straight line down to meet your chin. That one was a little messy. I'm gonna fix that. And then when you delete these lines, or erase, clean it up a little bit, you have some cheekbones. Who's excited? It's midnight for me, and I was out baking in the sun all day with a pal, so I'm like dying, but I decided I wanted to draw this because everybody was telling me to. You guys are really in control here, don't let me fool you. Next, I get to about this step, and like clockwork, I forget that people have necks, and I lock in around the cheekbone and sort of like whatever this is, malnourished schoolboy look that Blair's got going on with his like sunken in cheeks. I remember that people have necks, so I draw mine. My necks are a little skinnier. It's not like anatomy accurate, but sort of like in the middle of this line right here. I'll start doing his neck, and it's just two lines, a line after that, and a line down at the bottom, and then I square that off. And then if you look at necks, there's kind of lines that you can add to make it more realistic. You can even add some lines here to kind of look like an Adam's apple. This is kind of a long neck, but I'm sort of rocking with it. We're gonna keep it. And then I do that thing where you just add a little shadow underneath. Your keybinds are your friends. G is the typical fill tool keybind. I'm a really slow artist, so things like that help me. Do your research about your programs that you're using and what can make your life easier. And after this, I'm sort of a perfectionist about this. I focus on character faces a lot, as maybe if you couldn't tell. And so I kind of go back and forth between tweaking certain lines because I have it in my brain that every single line counts and where it is. Cool thing about drawing is you can put a line anywhere and call it something, so you can have tons of fun when it comes to drawing your characters and giving them specific things. After this is where it really matters, because this is sort of a base for most of my characters. Most of my characters have the simple cheekbones that look like this. Some of them are less than others. Like Marbles is more muted down because she's a younger character, whereas Roscoe's are more like exaggerated, and Blair's sort of right in the middle, so I thought he was a good option. But when it comes to noses, eyes, and mouth, this is where you can add a lot of detail to your character and how you can escape same face syndrome. So I'm gonna take you through the main three here for my OC story and show you the differences in their features and how I sort of differentiate them. We'll start with their noses. All of them are different shapes if you really break it down. Shoya's is this triangle that sort of goes down. Ima is sort of a square like this that goes down like that. It's like a cat nose, and she has like a little circle at the tip of her nose to make it seem a little bit pointier. Liakai has this little tip at his nose that I really like, and it's sort of crooked. I did that on purpose, fun fact. And all three of these are different noses, but you break it down in the exact same steps. So that's what we're gonna do right now. First of all, I start from this line here. I go down, and I make it a little triangle. This gives you a really good, like, sort of I don't know, guide for where to put your other features. Like his eyes will probably be like here in the middle of his face, and his eyebrow bone will kind of go up because these should connect. Your eyebrows should connect from the sort of base of your nose because that is how real eyebrows work. So get into the habit of doing that and learning where different parts of your face go. Can I erase, please? Thank you. This looks so silly, but trust the process. For noses, I draw a little circle to start myself off because that is actually how I draw noses. So first thing you want to do is add a little circle, clean that up a little bit. Then for noses, I do a little dip down in the middle. Keep this line there because that is important and that's going to separate the little dip in the nose. And then go out like this, like you're creating little mountains, and then go up like that. And it creates a really good base for any type of nose that you're wanting to do. This portion can be bigger if you want it to. These can be more flared to give it more personality. They can even be like super small. And then if you want to get even crazier with it, you can kind of go out here. And I kind of just like put lines until it feels right. Our dear Blair here has sort of a flatter nose bridge, or like the flat part of the top of your nose. So we're going to try to kind of mimic that. And basically for Blair, it's just a line across his entire nose. And it goes down like that. I keep that line there and just play around until it feels right. I think this is a very Blair nose. Don't be scared of nostrils. Everybody has them. When I was a really baby artist, I was scared of actually drawing nostrils because I thought it looked like their noses were flared all the time. It doesn't. That's a lie you tell yourself. Add a little tip of his nose here. It's kind of more up, actually. And there you go. You have a nose. Blair's nose is a little bit smaller than this, so I just shrink it down. I go back and forth and play around with where my lines are the entire process, but basically for noses, remember circle, little circle, mountain shapes. It's like a zigzag, like that. That's the shape you want right here. And then this will be your nostril, and this will be the side of your nose. It's easy once you get the hang of it. I obviously have been drawing noses for a really long time, so I got it down to basically a science, but we have a nose. Next, we get to focus on this portion, which this is exciting because you can also have a lot of fun here, and I will show you. Let's compare Roscoe and Leokai's noses so you can see. Leokai has a very sharp, sort of crooked nose. So the lines of his nose kind of go like that. It's very sharp and very sleek, skinny little nose, a snatched little nose, like that. Very messily like that. That's the vibe that Leokai's nose is. If we go over to Roscoe, it's very wide. It's a lot wider. His nose sort of goes in and then it goes out like that. And this is a shape that you will see all the time. This like hourglass shape. That is how my noses are built. How wide this is, or maybe the shape of it. Let me get a better example. I guess Leokai is our better example. You can change the shape of this, because if Leokai's nose was that basic shape, it would technically start from right here, and it would be perfect, but I make it crooked and go in like that. Do a bunch of different shapes. Do a bunch of weird shapes, but it should vaguely resemble this. So, you start from where his eyebrow is supposed to be. You go down. Blair, let's look at Blair over here. Blair has sort of that, like, oval, not oval, but like rounder-ish shape. So let's get rid of all that. Let's get rid of all this mess. It's kind of a rounder shape. And there's that shape that you want. I normally erase one side and just do one of those like anime-esque things. And you can kind of have fun with it, and maybe Blair has a little bit of a indent in the middle of his nose, like a nose bump. Just think about different features like that when you're drawing your characters and add them, because it's fun. Okay. We have a nose. Next thing I do, I add these little lines that I think are doing something to give my nose a little bit more shape. And I go up like that. And this line isn't normally there. I keep it to really one side of the face, honestly. Get rid of all that extra mess. and you have a nose. The next thing I do, lips. Most of my lips have the same breakdown if you look at it, especially if I'm drawing this. It dips in, goes up, and then either goes up again if it's a smile, or it'll go down again if it's a frown. But if you look at lips, they have that little indentation in the middle where it kind of goes down. So let's go to our baseline here. Go to the middle of it. It should be pretty lined up with your nose, at least for Blair. If you want to draw uneven lips, go for it. It's actually a really good practice to make imperfect characters. If you think to Arcane, I'll use V as an example. Her lips are uneven, and it makes for a really interesting design. We're drawing Blair today, who's like pretty boy, canonically pretty boy, so we're gonna make sure most of his features are pretty even. Go to the middle of your lips, go down. I find it gives you really cool, like, line language, I guess, if you, like, erase to get certain shapes instead of drawing everything perfectly the first time around. Go like that, go out. I think Blair will smile. Blair will get a little bit of a smile, so we'll go like that. We're gonna fix it. Mouths are low-key my kryptonite. Play around with the size a little bit, play around with everything until it looks right to you. Maybe we'll lessen the middle line a little bit. I do little ovals at the end because I think it makes sense. Blair has little dimples, so I'll give him those. And then I do my 2 lip lines at the top and the bottom, and Blair has a little snaggle tooth, so we'll add his little tooth. This gets shaped out more in the rendering process, which we will be getting into today, so just hold on to your hats, guys. This obviously is gonna look kind of weird, but if you like cover this, I almost tried to cover my tablet screen with my hand as if you can see me, but if you don't look at the eyes, this looks perfectly normal. So let's work on the eyes next. Eyes, we all got them. Mine don't work. You want a little bit of lore drop? I wear glasses in real life, and it's eyes. I have like a crazy prescription. Like actually like Bobble from, what is it, Tinkerbell? That's me. You go to your little base here. I start out with a little line. I go down. And I start with the bottom lash, like the bottom lash line, because if you want to know a little trick, if you draw both of them, if you look at your thicker line, here, we'll get rid of one so you can see. If you draw that, and it looks like your character is sleeping or has their eye closed, you did good, and your eyes are in the right spot. I think these are a little uneven, so I'll fix that in a minute, but go like that. This is for your little, like, the start of your waterline. Everybody's eyes sort of, like, dips in right here, so that's what I draw that little line for. And then I go over the top, and this is where you can get some, like, character contrast. If your character is, like, emo core, you can draw their eyes like that and like have their lids like this. It just depends on how wide you want your character's eyes to be and how open you want them to be. For Blair, we'll give him sort of a calmer expression. So just go like that, but basically it's one line at the top and then your top lash line like that. And then I go over here to the middle and I draw the little middle. And now you can have some fun and focus on if your character has really long lashes, if your character has no lashes, whatever you want to do. Once again, Blair's a certified pretty boy, so we're gonna give him like some cute lash line here. Connect it to the bottom. We're gonna give him some bottom lashes and maybe even a top lash since I'm feeling nice. Something along those lines. And then next is the sort of choose your own adventure. You can do their top lid or you can do their like bottom, like the bags under their eyes. Everybody has this little part under their line, and then after that you can kind of make eye bags more exaggerated. I'll give Blair some eye bags because he's a creepypasta character and I think it suits him. So just draw some lines. It should be like ovals if you're doing eye bags. And then for my style, I go in and I do a lot of detailing, mostly like with line art. So I'll go in, I'll add some like deeper shading, give them just like a tired eye, you know? This might be a little too much for Blair. Something more like that. I think that's better. Okay, next, go up and do your eyelid. It's just a little line and then a line that kind of comes over it. And you have an eye. This is how I draw eyes. I'm gonna be lazy and copy and paste it over here. Not an amazing habit to get into, but I switch between digital and traditional, so sometimes I have this to kind of lean on and sometimes I don't, so it keeps me in practice of drawing the second eye, but I don't want to right now. Next, we gotta take a break. Look at it fully. I have a habit of going really close into my canvas because my screen is really small and my eyesight is bad, but you want to double check and make sure everything is looking good. So I do sort of, what is this? Oh, I was like actually drawing when I was over there. Get into the habit of flipping your canvas and looking at everything from a bird's eye view. This looks fine to me, but his eyes seem a little bit off. You can make them a little bit smaller if you want it to look semi-realistic. I like that better than this like huge eye. I have like eye size blindness sometimes, so sometimes my character's eyes look absolutely ginormous. I think that looks better. Remember that faces are pretty uneven too, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Even when you're making like a quote-unquote perfect character, people's eyes are a little uneven, people's noses are a little crooked, and people's jaws are a little, you know, uneven. That's real life. So I don't worry about it too much, and neither should you, but this is pretty good. Obviously, it's not perfect on both sides, but I don't really care, and I keep going. His ears are bothering me a little bit, so I'm gonna fix those next before his eyebrows. I know where my line markers are. I can see where my circle was and where his eyes are, so the middle of his ear should be right here, and it should start at sort of the top of his cheekbones. For ears, I go out, sort of like a little peak of a mountain, and then I go in, and then a little circle. And that is how I draw ears. Okay. We have some ears. They're a little uneven, but it's going to be covered with hair, so I'm not going to worry about it. Since this is an art tutorial video, though, I will show you how I actually draw my ears. I go out for that little piece of ear that peeks out. I go up to the top and make sort of the cartilage and just sort of line the ear. And then I do this like weird shape. I don't know what you would call this, but then I fill that in with my line art color, and it sort of looks like the inside of an ear. And then sometimes I used to go like this and do a full, and I do like how that looks, but sometimes I will also just go like this and call it a day. For this is like more in style for me, so we'll do that. And I'll do that to the other side, but I won't make you watch. Something like that. I add my character's piercings in early and then render them later, so it just starts out as line art. Blair just has these little gauges, so I give him those. Next, we have to add our eyebrows. We basically know where it's supposed to be, so if you catch your line like this, just kind of go under it. Just do a cool little eyebrow shape. It's most of the time it's going to be something like that with something like that on top. But obviously, once you have your base down, play around. Everybody's eyebrows are a little bit different, so I fill mine in completely, and if I want them to be different colors, like for Marble, since she is albino, I colored them white during my like line art rendering process. But most of the time, my character's eyebrows stay lined in like that. And this is kind of crazy since it's a face, like a head-on shot. So I'll kind of calm it down a little bit so I can draw the rest of his eyebrow. His eyebrows are uneven. I can see that. So the lasso tool is my best friend, so I can get everything down. Try to make sure everything stays within that graph. His eyebrow would probably go up to here, so I try not to pass it. And if I want to get absolutely crazy style with it, I will add some lines as like shading. I do this mostly if I'm sketching, since I don't have like the liberty of doing a bunch of cool shading on digital. The last thing I will do is the actual irises of the eye. So Blair always has like a semi-calm expression on his face if I'm not drawing him all crazy style, all creepypasta-esque. Sometimes I don't finish them and just put a little dot in the middle because I think it looks kind of cool, and then I just play around with the shape. I think your irises can say a lot about characters. When I'm drawing like my werefox/werewolf characters, I will do an iris that kind of looks like this to make it seem more like an animalistic eye. But for a character like Blair, where he's like dark and mysterious, I'll just do something like this. There you go. You have a face. Guys, you have a face. Obviously, it has taken me years of practice to be able to just pull this out of my ass, but then I go around, clean up what needs to be cleaned up. This is honestly sort of unnecessary, but if you see anything that doesn't really look like your character, like this part of his jaw is a little bit crazy, so I reel it in a little bit, give him more of a slimmer look. Just things like that you can change the more you learn about people's facial structure. After this, I will move on to hair, and the way I draw hair is a little bit weird, and I don't do that whole like, you know, draw your hairline, figure out where your part is. I kind of just do it in my brain, but for the sake of this video, I will try to walk through the steps as much as possible. First things first, turn the opacity down on your layer a lot, make a new layer on top of it, and get started. Blair has this like Final Fantasy aura going on, so I'm gonna try to capture the mop on top of his head the best that I can. Anyways, hair. How do I do it? Let's figure this out. I have probably what your favorite artist is telling you not to do, a sort of like way of drawing hair. You can think about a part if you want to. I don't ever do that until kind of late in the game. So I start with bangs first because most of my characters have bangs. But if a character has a lot of forehead showing, I will kind of do something different, especially since Roscoe had some like locks going on. So this is a little different and I had to figure out the parts of his hair, but for literally the rest of these characters, this is how I do my hair. I keep my bangs down to sort of like a science, and there's always like a starting piece. So that's how I start all my hair because I have a really big starting point to go off of. This is sort of like the middle of his head, so I'll go down from here and draw that starting piece for his bangs. Make it cool, add some dimensions to it. I sort of build my hair up as we go. You can see it in other speed paints and time lapses, but I get all of my shapes down, cleaning it up as I go. I am not a sketch and then line art artist. I do everything on one layer and call it good. So this is kind of an old drawing, so this hair is a little bit outdated, so we're gonna give it a little bit of a refresher, but we're gonna keep this shape in mind. So I'm gonna build up a little bit more of his bang, sort of like that. He's got some like weird swoopiness going on that I'll probably end up toning down a little bit because that's really how I do hair nowadays. I've been reeling it in with my age. You know, with age comes wisdom, and my wisdom is your hair doesn't need to be crazy all over the place. Can if you want it to be though. Don't let me stop you. The other side kind of swoops around into like a little baby emo bang. I will probably lessen this a little bit though and make it more shaggy, just covering his eyebrows because I want some of his lash to show at least. And we got some bangs. I have all of them meet sort of up at the top. And then I just kind of use this as a starting point to keep going. His bangs kind of frame his face a little bit, so I'll add some of that detail here. I honestly just put lines where I think they should go and then clean it up a little bit later. I add a little bit of layering to all of my characters' little hair, especially the front pieces. So I'll kind of go like that. And maybe it'll cut down. I'm self-taught, so I don't have all of those like cool tricks or rules that art programs and art schools teach you, but there are a couple things I keep in mind when I'm doing my line art and stuff like this, like tangent lines. If you don't know what a tangent line is, I don't know how to explain it with words, but basically if I had a piece of hair coming from here that met this piece of hair, this would be a tangent line. So I avoid doing that and make sure my lines don't really touch each other, and I make sure that this doesn't meet like right here with this other piece of hair is, because that would be kind of confusing. I make sure it goes out past that. I just keep adding these little sections until it builds up into something usable. Blair kind of has a part here at the side of his head, so I'll go up like that. And something that I do often is I'll go around and kind of do like the shape that I want his hair to have, and I'll sketch it out like that. Blair's hair is supposed to be kind of crazy longer at the top and get shorter down at the bottom, so I add some pieces that mimic that. Most of my hairlines are just me going like this, two lines that meet each other a bunch of times until it looks good. And then to make it a little easier on myself, I'll either lower the opacity some more so I can see better, or just completely delete this section, but I'll keep it there for now because most of the time I keep it there. And this is pretty good for what I want Blair's hair to look like. Add a couple more things, add a couple more lines, and I think this is a good base to go off of, so we're gonna speed through the rest of this. It's mostly me just going around, going over my lines, and then cleaning them up with my eraser, and I think it gives some cool shape. So I'll overline, go in with my eraser, clean it up a little bit. I also cover a lot of my hair when I'm rendering, so I keep it messy. Okay. Once you're to this step where you've kind of cleaned up a couple of things and you have the outside of your line, this is when I go to my bottom layer here, if I didn't already, and get rid of sort of this top of his head area. And I can see his hair a lot better and see what I need to add. I'm pretty happy with the shape of this. I think it's giving Blair, but there's some extra space here that we need to figure out. I go up here and I start adding even more lines to kind of break up the sections of his hair and fill in that space. This is close to being a tangent line, so I'm going under and making this a bigger shape. I'll kind of follow the guides that I've given myself and go up here erase some things, keep some things. I just go around making random shapes until I get a head of hair that I like. His bangs are a little messy, so I let some of these closer lines slide, and I just clean up as I go. Sort of like when you're cooking and you put things away as you go, that's like how my art process is. Blair's hair is a little weird, it gets a little messy, so I'll go out and kind of spiral out at the side here to make it look like he has an actual part going on, even if he really doesn't. And I like this. I think this is a good base. I'll clean up a few more of my lines and then we'll be ready to move on. I sort of break it down into, I have my beginning sketch layer and I build layers and layers on top of that. So like right here, this part of his head is like the bottom layer, his bangs are the second layer, and these extra pieces that I added right here are like the very top layer. And then I turn my opacity up a little bit, and I'll either go in with my eraser or my cute little lasso tool, and I will delete any part of his hair that doesn't belong. I like the eraser better because I can get up close and personal. I don't like how his ear is sticking out here, and doing this you'll probably find different areas where it gets like that. And don't take anything I say in this video as like you have to do it this way. You can draw however you want and you can do whatever you want. There's no rules. I think there are specific things you can take into account that'll make your art a little bit better and more cohesive, but overall, you know, do your own thing. But if any of my steps help you, or you want to take a specific part of my style and try to incorporate into your own, feel free. Feel absolutely free. Bottom layer, turn the opacity all the way up again. And then if this looks good to you and you can't see anything like jarring that you need to erase, combine your layers and we have a face. The next thing I do after this step takes a little bit of technical knowledge to get it set up, but basically this is my line art layer here at the top. I go to this little button over here and set it as a reference layer, and then I go to the layer below it. I go to my magic wand. It says refer to editing layer only, and you have all of these little settings here. I really don't know what a lot of this means, but basically go down here if you're using Clip Studio to what it's going to refer to, and do the same little like lighthouse symbol, I think is what it is. This makes it so this magic wand will clip onto your reference layer, whatever layer has this little symbol on it. Even if I'm on this layer, if I click my canvas, it will highlight everything that I drew. And then if you go down here to invert selected area, now it is only the inside of Blair. So I go for like a darker gray at first and I completely cover it. And obviously my lines are not the cleanest, so I have to go around to certain spots and kind of touch it up. But you know, this is kind of too close together for my liking, so I will exaggerate it a little bit more with my coloring layer, like the little gray that I'm using. Go around, clean up the messes. If you see any apparent line art mistakes that are gonna bother you, this is when I would do that before all of your colors are on, distracting you. But I don't really let it bother me that much, so I'm fine with how it looks. Now that you have your base layer down, I go to the very top layer above my liner, above everything, and I start color picking. This isn't great to color pick from because I have all of my like lighting and everything on top of it, but I basically know what Blair's colors are, so choose your character's colors. When it comes to picking my colors, they're very like this portion. I don't do a lot of bright colors, as you will come to find out. When it comes to coloring, there's a quicker way to do this that makes sure all of this stays in the lines of the gray that you put down. Go to the layer that has your background color on it beneath your line art, add a new layer on top of it, and there's this thing called a clipping mask, and it'll clip this to the layer below, so whatever you draw, no matter where you are on the canvas, it will only draw inside of where your gray is. I just completely fill it in, so my bottom layer is always my skin tone layer because it's just kind of easier to do it that way. Next, I'll go on top, make that another clipping layer, and I will go in and do his hair. There's quicker ways to do this. This is not dark enough for Blair's hair. I'm just not realizing. That's probably a little bit better. There are faster ways to do this. You can go in with your magic wand once again and try to like fill in each section. My line art is very messy, so I mostly just go in and color it all, honestly, or I'll use my lasso tool. After this, I go back to my skin layer. I put a new layer under the hair. My hair is always my top layer, so there's no really like science behind it. I just think it's easier. And then I have to fill in the whites of his eyes. I don't do white Whoa, just drop my pen. I don't do white. I kind of stick to a more like muted color, sort of like this. I think that's actually pretty close to perfect. I could maybe go even a little darker. Yeah, I like that. Eye color and teeth color are always the same. I got into this habit because it's a little bit easier and it's pretty close, unless your character has like purposely like a different sort of like eye color, or like maybe yellower teeth or gold teeth. Most of the time I stick to the same color for these. I choose a more like darker-ish color because bright white is a little bit jarring next to all of my other colors. So I choose something that blends in a little bit more. And I am a multi-layer warrior. I separate everything by layers because it makes more sense in my brain. So even the little irises of his eye are a separate layer, and I do think that is a little too light, so we'll go with this darker color here. Perfect. We have the base of Blair down. Next, after I have all of this down, the shading that I really focus on is skin shading. I go to my skin tone layer here, make a new layer. It should automatically clip down, at least in Clip Studio Paint. If you make a new layer under another clipping mask, it'll automatically gibberish. It'll automatically make it a clipping layer also. I eye drop my skin color here, and see this color wheel? If you're not good at color theory, I am not the best at it. I didn't study it. I wasn't in school for art at all. So it's kind of like a make your own type of decisions ordeal. If you're not great with color theory and you can't immediately choose what you want to shade your skin with, then this is a hack I learned from my basic knowledge of like complementary colors. Most of my skin tones, and most skin tones, honestly, if your character has natural skin, are gonna be kind of on this side of the color wheel, and you're just gonna go directly across from it over here and choose a color on the opposite side, and that should automatically make this a complementary color to what you already have down. And with that, I will go in and I will shade. Obviously this is blue, it's not gonna stay blue, but it's easy to see, and you can change the tone of it a little bit later, and it makes it super easy. And I go in with my shading. I always make these a little bit darker. I don't have any real method for how I shade faces, but if you look at pictures of actual faces, you'll see that sort of around the face is shaded by the eyes and the lips and under the neck. I'll go through kind of what my tried and true method is. I'll do under the cheeks here. I will do the inside of my ear cartilage if you can see it on your character. Then I will go under the nose and I'll kind of do like this little swoopy motion, because remember your nose is sticking out on your face, so there's probably a little bit of a shadow underneath. And then I kind of just add a little more and outline where like my different shapes are. I think adding a lot of shading to sort of the middle of the nose is kind of a cute touch. And then I will just add things that make my little line shapes pop. I'll fill that in. Where I put these little hatch lines, I guess, I will color that in. Anything that you think normal shadows go, that is where I put most of my shading, especially if you have like eye bags. Make sure you get those, because I focus a lot of attention on my character's eyes. Kind of just go around. Sometimes I don't do this and I will just lazily go like this and fix it up later. But if you have the time and you want to take a little bit of effort, leave a little bit inside there and finish up your shading. If your forehead's showing, it should be shaded on the outside. Blair's forehead isn't really showing, but I will try to mimic it a little bit. And then I make his chin look like it's sticking out just a tad. I can even remove some to make it a little bit fancier. But if you can see, I sort of outline the face and then put a little bit of contrast on the parts that I want to stick out, especially if you have things like Blair has a dimple. And then I go in and I shape out my character's lips. This is, if you have like an uneven lip, you can like do that in this step. I'm keeping Blair's pretty simple. Go like that, kind of follow the little guides that we made ourselves with these two little lines. That's what I put them there for. I blend most of this out, so I keep it pretty messy, honestly. And then we get to his neck and you're sort of just outlining the guides that you made yourself already. Especially this, I focus on the major lines of his neck. And this looks pretty good. Sometimes I will make the cheekbones more prominent by adding some shading here. I'll probably do that for Blair. Just a little bit of extra shading, you know? You get to your stopping point, you know, why are you blue? I'll tell you why. You need to find the tonal correction on whatever sort of thing that you're using, what is it called? Art program, whatever art program you're using. On Clip Studio Paint, you want to go up to Edit, and go all the way down to tonal correction, and then your hue, saturation, and luminosity button. I know Procreate has this when I used to use it, and I know Clip Studio Paint has it. And basically, you can change your hue, saturation, luminosity. Hue is what color it is in simple terms. So I try to find a color that is gonna blend into his skin tone a little bit more. It's mostly just like over here on this side. It makes it easier for me to find something that's gonna work. These are all a little bit too bright, so I'll go down and I'll play with the saturation. My colors are pretty dull, so my saturation is down most of the time, and this is gonna be how dark your actual color is. And I play around with this until I find something that I think will work for my character and blend in really well with the skin. I think this is honestly fine, so we can call it there. And then I go down, I find my little blend tool. I use this Blendy soft brush. I will try to link all of the brushes that aren't automatically in Clip Studio Paint down in the description, and I go in and I just start blending things out. There's no real science behind it. Try to keep the shapes that you wanted, but kind of soften them a little bit, and then I'll go under and I will add a little bit of dimension and blend out some of my colors into the skin. Life hack, especially shapes like this where I left them like sort of abstract on purpose. Blend them out a little bit and you start seeing little shapes start to form. This is sort of like a painterly thing that I keep for my art personally. His lips, I kind of just go in on the sides of all my characters' lips and blend them out a little bit. I try to keep it so my darker colors are in the middle here. And then for the eyes, you can kind of, I have a lot of fun with the eyes because you can sculpt it out really however you want. The better blend tool you have, the more fun this portion is gonna be. And then, like I said earlier, I keep the inside sort of blank so I can blend it out like this. And you have a really pretty shading contrast now from doing that. And when you add your highlights, it's gonna look even better. Shading like this immediately gives a little bit more dimension to our nose. So this little like crooked part, or like a little notch in his nose, is like more defined now because we did that. I keep my shading pretty messy because I think the more texture that your skin has, sort of the better. There's obviously like a middle ground that's probably like a sweet spot, but more texture the better. Gives your piece something interesting for people to look at. This is far from perfect, but I think it looks fine, so I'm keeping it. That is our face blended out for now. Next thing I do, I make another layer and I go back, I drop his skin and I just go a little bit lighter, and then I will go in and I'll add my highlights. Once again, don't have a huge science behind it, but I know his cheekbones are probably more highlighted, so I'll add some messiness there. I know that the tip of his chin is probably a little bit brighter, and I know the tip of his nose is probably a bit brighter. Also, adding little half spheres around his nose is always a little, like, a good touch. I think it looks good. You can put a little bit of highlight on like the Cupid's bow, and then I always go in and sort of make my lips look a little shiny with my highlight. Anything you want to be sort of accentuated and like pull people's attention into, add a little bit of highlight. The brow bone is gonna get a little bit of attention here. And then the reason I keep this blank is because I go in and I do like sort of like little hatch lines, I guess, and it looks highlighted a little bit, and I really like how that looks. So that is a big part of my art process. Go in where you think everything should be shaded and then blend it out once again. This looks really messy, but I keep it like that because, once again, you're adding a little bit of texture by not making everything perfect. I will keep some of my shapes sharper than others, like the tips of his nose, these little lines that are like harsher highlights. It honestly just depends on what you want people to focus on when it comes to your faces. Those are the highlights done, and now it is even the funner part because this is where I kind of add all of the extra details. I go in with a new layer and I set it to overlay, and this, if your characters have makeup, if your characters have like some cool eyeliner, if you want to make your eye bags more apparent like I'm going to do, pick a color that sort of resembles that. My eye bags are sort of like this darkish magenta, and I go in with my airbrush tool and I sort of lightly go around the bags of his eyes. Little details like this can make your piece really interesting to look at, especially like I'll show you. For Oliver and for Roscoe, they have some eyeshadow going on. This is the part of my process where I added all of that in. After you have your little finer details done, you want to go in with another overlay layer, back to your airbrush, make it a little bit bigger, and this is when you're going to start blushing your character a little bit to give it those like natural blush elements. I think we'll do like a something like that. And then you just go in. I always do the tips of the ears and the cheekbones, and then the tips of his nose, his chin, his lips, and sort of, I think this is a clavicle right here, whatever this is, parts of his shoulders. I kind of want my color to be darker, so I'm gonna lock this layer and sort of maybe a little bit more purple. I think that's a little bit better on the eyes, so that's what we're gonna do. And this makes a big difference, obviously. So this is a really important step. Next, this is a step that I like to do, but I give a little bit of attention to the hair. I'll lock the layer, go in once again with my airbrush. I drop the color of his hair and kind of just do like a lighter-ish color. And I will go in and I will put an ombre on all of my character's hair. It makes the like rendering look really cool and a lot better. So don't forget to do that. Blair is kind of a special case because he's like a dirty blonde freak with like dark roots. Never trust a dishwater blonde, guys. Don't do it. After this, we can move on to the next steps in my process. To make this a little bit easier, I go down here and I select every single one of my coloring layers, starting from this gray all the way up to the hair layer, and I will make that a folder. It makes it easier, it makes it cleaner, and it helps with our shading process a lot. But before we get into shading, I am going to show you my cool line art trick that I stole from people. I think it was Tame TKA who I stole this from. I'm not 100% sure, but basically this is a cool hack for softening up your lines. You go to your line art layer, you duplicate it, you go to your bottom one. I always set it to about 55. That's what I've been setting it to recently. Go up to filter and blur, Gaussian blur. I'm pretty sure on Procreate there's just a Gaussian blur like setting, but find this, anything that's gonna blur your line art layer, and then kind of play around with it, and it softens up your lines like a lot. And I think that's probably fine, but if we look at the difference, it just adds a little bit of something that I really like. Once we have that done, we get back to our colors. Go to your folder, do a new layer, make that a clipping mask. So this is something really cool about clipping layers over folders. It will still color over everything, but it will only be the stuff that's in that folder. So, and what I'll do, I'll set this layer to multiply, and then I'll set the opacity to about 50. And basically this is just gonna go over everything as sort of like a shader. And then I find the color that's gonna work for what I want. I think that's fine. You can always change it later. And I go in, and this is when I really start pushing shadows. So the darkest parts are what you're gonna go in and put shadows over. Like this line right here is gonna get some special attention, as well as under his nose, and maybe even parts of his hair. You kind of like mimic, but give them a little bit of separation, like it's a shadow. This is when you can also start thinking about your like light source. My light's gonna be coming in from this side, so I can do things like maybe put a little bit more shadows on this side of his face. It's gonna look like a lot at first, but this is something you just gotta like trust the process on. Maybe his nose is casting a shadow over here. Some of his hair is probably down, making this part of his face a little bit darker. His whole ear on this side can honestly be covered. I think that's fine. Maybe we'll make these shadows a little bit bigger since our light source is coming from the other side. I put a little bit more contrast into the middle of his lips and maybe the bottom. And then when it gets to hair, I sort of dig out the parts that are going to be the darkest. This side of his head is going to be mostly covered in shadow, so a lot of this is going to be covered. I go out, and this is when you can really start separating your different colors. I think I'm going to speed through most of this, but I'll explain the gist of it. Your light source is coming from this side, so your shadows would be on the opposite side of the hair, sort of like that. This is where we got to. Basically, my light source is over here. I pushed a lot of these shadows on this side of his head, so most of this is completely covered. I'll probably add a little bit more, whereas this doesn't have as much shading at all. And I kind of just traced around my pieces of hair here and made sure that this side was basically like this side of the hair was basically untouched and this side had a shadow on it, and I did that for all of the pieces of hair. And that's pretty basic shading all the way down. And then the last thing I do is I will give a little bit of quick shading to his teeth and his eyes. And then I will go in with my blend tool. The shadows in his hair stay kind of the same. I will go for a couple pieces and soften them up a little bit just because I like the color variant that it gets me. So I'll go around with my blend tool just sort of on the outsides of some of these pieces. Makes it seem a little bit more blended, just something like that. And then I will blend some of my other shadows if I don't want them to be as harsh. This is probably a little bit much. Blend that out a little bit. All of this could probably be in shadow, I think. I think that would make some sense. And then we can blend it out a little bit. Basically, the blend tool is your best friend. Now is the super fun part where we can finally go in and start rendering. So this is my top line art layer. I will make a layer above it, and then I will start my rendering process, which basically this is just adding extra details on top of everything that you already drew. A little bit scary, but don't fret. Don't even fret. Blair's secret hair hack is that I go in with this something like that. This blonde on top of this brown that I put down, and it just makes him look blonde. But basically, I will make a bunch of random shapes and kind of just build on top of my hair. I always start with either hair or like the face first, but I'm gonna do hair now because it's kind of the most intricate. I'm semi-copying the shapes I already have, but once again, giving it a little bit more dimension. This might be a little too bright for the hair. That's probably way better. Okay, I will go into messier pieces like this one and carve them out again. And it does get rid of some of your shadow work, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about it. Something like that. You can change the color to be like a lighter brown and go over some of these pieces. Something like that. Just add some random shapes and line strokes. I mostly focus like around the bangs area, and this kind of just gets lost in the shadows anyway, so I sort of leave it. Next, I will go in with eyes really quick. His are like more hazel, if anything, so I will kind of go with like this ring of brown around his eyes. And then I kind of just choose a lighter color and highlight. Something like that from far away. It gives the appeal of really detailed eyes. The appearance of really detailed eyes. This footage is going to be a mess. I trip up on my words so much, but I can't like cut it out because it's not a voiceover, so just bear with me. But if you're this far in the video, I assume you already have. This is when you can finally go in with a pure white, and I do pure white for the highlights of my character's eyes. Blair doesn't have crazy highlights though because he's not like... He's a little bit of a scarier character, and I will even add a couple to lips and the tips of noses, and it sort of like livens up his face a little bit. Other than that, our line art is pretty clean this time, but for spots like this, you can color pick and go in and kind of clean them up a little bit. Certain areas like this, you can clean up a little bit. Any mistakes you may have missed, only if they bother you though. These are really small details that I don't think most people are going to be paying attention to, but I'm kind of making light of them by making them a video where you can see super up close. But I think the little messiness of it all kind of gives to my like characters a little bit and my style. Next, those earrings, we'll do like a dark gray and sort of just render them out a little bit. There we go. And this is basically our finished face, but we're not done. I'm gonna get rid of the color pickers we have. I can even just delete that layer, honestly. Everything that makes your drawing, I want you to take all of it and put it into a folder. Next, I want you to make 3 clipping mask layers. I'm not like trying to tell you to do things, but if you want to copy what I do, this is what you need to do. I go in with 3 clipping mask layers on top. This very first one, I set it to multiply. I go over to my little airbrush here, and I choose mostly like a magenta-ish color. It blends really well with my like softer line art, and I will go into the parts, like the side of his face that is in the shadows, and I will really just like push them out with this like multiply layer. And I kind of just play around with it until it like looks good. I honestly think that's probably fine. Then you're gonna go to the layer on top of it, change that to what's called a color dodge layer. And how these works, if you just put color straight onto it, it's pretty, but it can be better. So go all the way down to your color picker and choose a complete black and fill your entire canvas with it. Everything is black on this canvas, but hey, it's a color dodge layer, so you can't even see it. And now if you go in with a color, it is just like way brighter, honestly. It doesn't make too much of a difference on Clip Studio Paint, but it definitely makes a difference if you're on Procreate or something like that. And then I'll go in with like a lighter yellow, and this will start being your like big highlighting light layer. You can kind of go in with a warmer tone if you want to warm it up a little bit. Play around with this, see what you like. You can change the opacity of it depending on how bright you want it to be. I really like high contrast when it comes to this stuff, so I keep it basically all at 100%. Then you go to your next top layer, and I want you to change this one to overlay. This, if you put any color down, it'll make a cute little overlay on top. I mostly do something on the lines over here, like this. I put it over top. That's a little bit much, so I'll lighten it up a little bit. I play around with it a little bit. This might be a little bit better. If you feel like your multiply layer is a little bit too much, you can darken it. My shadows are pretty just like deep. So, and basically this is our before, and then you add all of that stuff on top, and this is our after, and I just think it looks a lot better. I forgot the little scar on Blair's nose, but don't fret. We can choose a little scar color, go back to our folder, and quickly add that in right over the tippy top of his nose here. Can't forget the scars, obviously. Blend it out a little bit, make it a little less crazy style. I could add some blood splatter maybe, but I think I will just end up leaving it. And then I put all of these into a layer anyway, just so if I ever need this for something, I can come back to this canvas, duplicate this folder, and that's how all of my headshots ended up here. I have all of the folders for their different faces on here. So, and you can easily move your head to, like, say if I want it in like sort of the center of the canvas maybe. You now have a finished face. This is how I draw my faces. This is how I drew every single one of these, and he fits right in with the group, and I can just honestly copy and paste this over to here. The overlay layer is making a little bit much, but he fits perfectly with like the rest of my characters, and we avoided same face syndrome. Honestly, he still looks stylized and like he goes with the rest of the group, but none of these other characters really look like him. I guess he looks a little similar to Shoya, but you know, not quite. They have different face shapes, and that is #awesome. But yeah, I hope this helped you in some way. It was a in real time lapse of how I personally draw faces and all of the features and cool tricks that I do. It's far from perfect, but I like how all my faces turn out, and it just is like stylistic to me. And if you want to like incorporate any of these into your like drawing process, feel completely free. It's what I'm making this video for. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did, a couple of you requested this, so I just wanted to make it. I hope my monotone voice didn't deter you. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!